Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm sitting here with my good friend Jonathan Nguyen, who is the VP of Strategy at Fortinet. Hi, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Hey, we're a couple telecom veterans here having a chat, right? Verizon, AT&T, in both of our backgrounds. It's nice that we share that common background.
Indeed, it's great to actually say this in public and get to do this in a public way. It's awesome.
Well, Fortinet's an amazing company. We're going to talk a lot about what you guys are doing at Fortinet, and the strategy. But I want to hear about you first. Tell us a little bit about your career. You've been at this a while.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the most fortunate guy in North America, right? I mean, I literally, came to this country as a refugee.
Wow.
Father was a foreign service officer, and when Saigon fell, he found himself stranded in this country.
Wow.
Through the grace of a lot of great people and efforts along the way, I've sort of realized this American dream to the point where, like yourself, we became a leader in an industry, and now get to talk to folks about what I love doing. 35 years after starting in the Foreign Service, and then making my way into Bell Atlantic and helping to write business cases to build the first SOC, to negotiate a SIM license, and then from business case conception to Gartner Magic Quadrant leader, to 16 years after joining Verizon to get to a spot where I'm helping to run the data breach investigations report. It just gave me a great perspective on what's happening in cyber and how we really begin to get it right from the outset as we move into this fourth industrial revolution that we're all talking about.
Spectacular. There's probably people watching right now who are writing business cases for SOCs as we speak. How do you get your boss to agree to build a SOC? Like, what are 2 or 3 things you better put in that equation?
I think where we are today, as opposed to when we first started, there's a decision on whether you should run security in-house or not. Back in the day, as it were, for larger enterprises where they really needed to have 24/7 deep control and visibility and had compliance concerns and operational concerns, it made sense to build it in-house. 35 odd years later, that in-house solution looks like 200 to 300 people, maybe $20 to $30 million a year to be viable.
Right.
And I think where we are in the environment today, the big question is security something that we should be doing in-house?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is today, irrespective of whether you're a mid-market or a large enterprise, is that, as Admiral Rogers, when he was over at Cyber Command, said, cyber's a team sport.
Right.
And so you better pick your right partners, because the other team is pretty sophisticated as well. So I would say the decision point about whether you're going to build your own SOC or hire someone else is that, what is your core competency? What Meg Whitman would say, what's the DNA of your organization?
Yeah.
Is it really about event monitoring, device management, or is it about incident response? Which sort of brings us to where we are in the industry, this focus between prevention and detection and response. So I would say for the larger shops, if your core competency is really about detecting and mitigating those threats, then maybe consider someone else, an MSSP. One of our old shops even, to do the event detection piece and let you focus on that. Because I don't think any one team can handle all the disciplines across that board. And that's why I think we're seeing things like managed detection and response services emerging. If you're going to build out your own SOC, again, from an infrastructure perspective, would you build out your own data center today, for instance? Are you going to go out and hire, retain, and train scarce cyber talent? Are you wanting to be the responsible party to acquire, maintain, and update technology and equipment? And how are you going to manage that as the rest of those IT functions, what is in the traditional legacy data center, moves into the cloud? And so I think those are big decisions to be asked. My opinion is that for most organizations that are mid-market, maybe it's not a good idea to build a SOC. For the larger enterprises, absolutely. Absolutely. But you're going to have to partner with people along the way.
Is cloud the forcing function that maybe allows you to consider doing things more broadly outside the enterprise, maybe even for a big company? Your stuff is scattered around anyway, right?
So cloud, everyone knows about cloud, the trends towards virtualization, the cost savings, the innovation drivers, the agility that it brings. Absolutely. But I think that when we think about cloud migrations, it really is within the context of the traditional data center environment. So all the things that we used to do in a traditional enterprise data center, all the computing, the correlation, the storage, probably better done in a series of multiple clouds. And then there are some things that require data lakes, some sensitive data, workloads that we're not going to move into a cloud. So there'll be hybrids. But what we're missing along the way is that same enterprise that is taking advantage of the cloud for agility, innovation, all this sort of good stuff. They're also becoming more and more interconnected ecosystems. So we're moving from networks to ecosystems. And so everything that was downstream of that enterprise data center is now interconnected. So you've got a supply chain that's everywhere from a small mom and pop to a global Fortune 2000. You've got connected vehicles, connected platforms, connected infrastructure, that all is part of that ecosystem. You know, Ed, in 2025, there's going to be 300 million plus connected vehicles in the United States alone, all of which are connected to that ecosystem, all of which are going to interface with a smart ecosystem. There'll be over 300 million connected homes. So the practical reality is that many elements of what we consider cloud are traditional computing environment. But because we're now more and more interconnected with these other platforms, there's going to be a lot of edge-based computing as well. And so what I advise people is that don't neglect the new things that you're going to be interconnected with that are going to be using edge-based computing, connected vehicles. You know, it's great that those connected vehicles will utilize the cloud for data storage, data correlation, and actualization. But think about what that's going to involve. So, for instance, the stretch of road from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, 90 kilometers, mostly straight. Speed limit's 140 kilometers per hour. You're going to have an autonomous connected vehicle traveling there with OT systems, IT systems, and IIoT systems, right? All transmitting high volumes of data, typically moving from 70 to about 90% of which is going to be encrypted. And you're not going to have a human interface. There's no human override. So the challenge in that type of environment is, will you get into a connected vehicle that has no onboard anti-collision systems, no fail-safe, and would you really entrust your life to a completely cloud-based interconnected ecosystem? Probably not. So there's gonna be some level of on-prem edge-based computing that I don't think people fully
a hybrid model.
Yeah, fully recognize yet. And in fact, when you think about this expansion of our IT ecosystem, the expansion is based on the nexus of three things. The nexus of the control plane, the data plane, and the management plane. At some point, the vehicle area network, the personal area network, the home network, the enterprise network needs to be connected to another network. That nexus is typically some form function of a next generation firewall, something that does network management, WAN optimization, security, resilience with say a wireless failover, for instance. So no matter where we get, as we take advantage of cloud and all the opportunities it brings, I ask people to be mindful of the new things you're connecting to as well, all of which will be IP enabled. So, our friends at Cisco told me that right now the average person is going to generate between 3 to 5 terabytes of data per day over the next 2 to 3 years. Think about the individual generating 5 terabytes of data per day.
That's like my kids on Instagram.
Okay, yeah. But you and I, back in the day, when we were working at carriers.
Yeah, that's a lot of data.
That was a lot.
That's still a lot of data.
That was a lot of data, right?
Right.
And now that's just on an individual basis. So that poor SOC operator, the poor CISO now, that has been struggling all these years, and we've talked about this, that 30 odd years after the advent of what we call cyber, when we started back in the day with my first packet filtering firewall. You remember those things, right?
I do.
So we went from packet filtering to stateful inspection to intrusion detection, intrusion prevention. We went to dynamic malware inspection called sandboxing. And along the way, we went from an SEM to an SIEM. Then we got an SIEM plus an analytics platform. Then we got UEB. All these things were added along.
Now it's AI.
Yeah, and AI, but both you and I have seen this, and all the peers in the industry have seen this after 30 odd years since the advent of what we call now cyber. We went from moats and keeps, which didn't work, it was called network security, perimeter-based security, or prevention approach. Then we saw APTs in about 2010, and then we went to analytics, and then cyber coming out of the DoD, a multi-dimensional operating domain. That poor SOC operator, Charlie the SOC operator, as you say in your cartoons, has not been able to keep pace with all these things. Because as we all know, outside of financial services, and the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, 12,000 data breaches over 11 years demonstrates that outside of financial services and a couple of discrete public sector organizations, the rest of us are struggling. frankly, we're struggling in security.
true. It's
And so poor Charlie, the CISO operator, is moving into the fourth industrial revolution where his team or her team, or Charlene, is going to be asked to not only mitigate those known threats, address the 0 days and advanced threats, but also be a business enabler, because that's a great buzzword now. Enable the digital transformation, the movement from a intuitive-led decision-making model to a data-driven business. And that same poor team is now grappling with massive amounts of data, more and more exposure, greater compliance requirements, and yet they're being asked to do all of that. And I think they're going to be stretched, which is, I think for me, the main reason why I came to where I am today, with the hope that we could work from a technology side of the house to manage complexity and help folks get it right? And just make their lives a little bit easier. Because I think going into this fourth industrial revolution, we have an opportunity before us. We have an opportunity to learn from all the lessons, the heartaches, the calls from those clients and government agencies and enterprises that have DDoS attacks, and it's 7:45 at night, and it's the beginning of a 3-day holiday weekend, and someone wants an expedited implementation, right? and we got to learn from that to the point where we can make security a move from being a disruptive risk to a normative risk. So I think that's the opportunity before us.
So let's talk a little bit about the Fortinet fabric.
Yeah.
You guys have an amazing interconnected weave of products, from real-time detection to prevention to incident response, even governance and risk. You guys have quite an assortment of products. Help me understand, because I know you and I both come from worlds where the existing state for most companies is they got a mess of stuff. How do I overlay a carefully designed fabric onto an existing mess?
So I think the bane of our existence in security has been complexity. And along the way, we always wanted best-in-class products and we bought lots of unicorns. And today, we're all managing a herd of unicorns running amok in our ecosystems, right? And we've got multiple management platforms, multiple orchestration tools, and many of us don't even know what's running in our networks. So the fabric itself is what, in essence, we've all been building and secretly wanted, to be honest with you. That earlier discussion about from that first packet filtering firewall to a stateful firewall, we added more devices from different vendors because we wanted best-in-class.
So it's been more a patchwork than a fabric.
It's been an ad hoc approach, and we hope to God that under the advent of a real attack, that all these things are going to function. They're all going to be able to share information, correlate data, and deliver a very prescriptive set of solutions to Charlie the SOC operator, right? And all that's got to work with a third-party intel feed, and that SOC operator then has to go through a manual sequence of orchestration to do segmentation. So 10 odd years after the advent of zero trust and least privileged strategies, all of which are essentially based on the idea that once you detect something bad happening, you're going to segment your network off. It's the last installation of PCI, internal segmentation. That sounds really intuitively simple. It's the right thing to do. But I'm always reminded of that horrible movie Titanic, right? So I'm sitting there in this movie.
It was a good movie.
It was a good movie.
Bad event, good movie.
My wife loved it, right? But I'm sitting there, and I'm a security geek, and I'm watching this scene where Leonardo's running around the ship, and every turn he comes to, there's a watertight door being closed. And I thought, well, that's segmentation, right? There's something bad happening, there's a security incident, and people are manually closing off watertight doors. It didn't work in 1912 on an iron coal-fired steamship. It's not going to work for a 21st century digital enterprise. And so the challenge before us and why the fabric is so essential is because you need to have deep automated visibility and control. That's great. That's been the holy grail up to this point. But now you have to do it at speed and scale. Scale meaning from what you called that edge to edge, from that IoT, OT edge, a connected vehicle, that home, that remote branch office, to what we call the legacy enterprise data center network, out into a series of public clouds. That is the new enterprise ecosystem. That's scale. The speed comes from this practical reality. I like to deal in practical realities. 5 years ago, the research from multiple sources and really great people in the industry and conversations was that from the point of the detonation of malware to the point of either incapacitation, irrecoverable damage was about 30 minutes. That was what the case was around Shamoon 1, that generation of threats. Fast forward to where we are today, and when you look at the industry reports, the findings in the various forensics case studies, on average, what I saw very recently from a very notable vendor is they found that the damage, 30% of an enterprise's network was damaged or incapacitated within the first 2 to 3 minutes from the detonation of malware. And so poor Charlie, the SOC operator, now has been told, I've got to do all of this, maintain complete visibility, work across disparate platforms, manage all that complexity, and oh, by the way, if all that works and I get the right information, I've got 2 to 3 minutes to act. And so the Fabric does a huge favor for security operators. It allows us and operators across the board to manage complexity, because up to this point, we really haven't had an ability to get best-in-class products from an integrated stack designed to work from the outset. We've had to build that. We have had to interconnect devices, modify collectors, modify parsers, make sure that those third-party intelligence feeds work, and then continually train and staff people. I think for operators, what they should focus on is the excellence in operating technology. I just don't think the role of operators is to build firewalls or to build parsers or to pay the amount of cost for development and QA to do third-party technology integration. And so when Ken and I had that discussion, you know, he agreed at the heart of what the Fabric
Ken,
is.
the CEO.
Ken Z, our founder and CEO,
right.
you know, just voted one of the 25 most influential executives in the industry.
Amazing man.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome. You know, he said that's what the Fabric is. The Fabric is an integrated framework of devices that share, collect, correlate data so that we have deep visibility and control at speed and scale to manage complexity. And the way you work it, because it's all based on FortiOS, our network security operating system, we recognize the fact that all of us, there are no green fields left. Unlike people like you and I who may have started 25 years ago and didn't leave our jobs, we built our own fabrics. But the practical reality is that folks are inheriting fabrics that were built 3 or 4 CISOs before. And so they have all of these devices. They have box sprawl. They've got a couple of unicorns grazing out there as well. And they're trying to figure out, how do I build a cohesive security framework which will address both common and advanced threats, support digital transformation and the business objectives, and now I'm being asked to deliver that at a reasonable level of due care.
Let me make sure I get it. So the essential primitives here are automation, open interfaces. Do I have that right? Because more or less...
Automation, open interfaces, and really stellar threat intelligence.
Threat intelligence powering like the oil in an engine in a sense. So if I have an existing infrastructure where maybe I don't have some of those things, things are very manual, do you guys roll in and you try and... Is that really like, as you look at a client, as a Fortinet, you know, executive talking to, let's say, a bank or something, and you look at what they're doing, are those the main things? Like, do you look and see how automated are you? Because to your point, if you got a couple of minutes to respond, you're not going to do that in human time. And how open can you snap Fortinet products into the existing design? And then to your point, can you ingest threat? Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, you are, because I think it's an iterative approach. No one's going to go in and rip out everything. But the Fabric allows you to leverage your legacy investments through the third-party integrations we have, through the SIEM. There are ways that you can integrate what you've had already, but optimize the road forward. And I think in the past, we've had to compromise between a best-in-class stack, if you will, and to deal with complexity. And I think moving forward, you know, the object of the exercise is to manage risk. If you can reduce complexity and do it in an automated way, and have really stellar threat intelligence, like from the Cyber Threat Alliance, where we were one of the founding members, you get really good information on what's happening in the wild. And then you have context. So the Fabric and its location points across that distributed ecosystem gives you the ability to see, have visibility, and to respond. The FortiGuard threat intelligence and its partners allows you to understand the context in which things are occurring. And if you can do that, and as we talked earlier about moving towards automated playbooks, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, then you begin to change the trajectory about where we are on detection, response, and recovery. Because if you can understand the TTP of that adversary now and see it, then you have a better likelihood of containing that threat. And that's a much more holistic environment. And so I think for one of the things the CISOs haven't seen, because traditionally we've been very operationally focused, right? But I look at that SEC versus Wyndham case as landmark. The idea that even though you're PCI or other levels of compliance, that doesn't equate to a reasonable level of due care. And I fast forward to this year where 2018, the SEC now requires publicly traded companies to declare the risks that they face.
Yeah. It's the classic compliance versus security.
And then when you look at GDPR or the New York financial regulations or the California privacy standards, there are two clauses that really ring out to me. One is that you've got to demonstrate that you've taken reasonable care to deploy processes and technologies to detect attacks and breaches, right? And the second piece is that you have to declare. I think the most interesting thing about GDPR is the one exception, which is that you don't have to declare if you can demonstrate that the data that may have been compromised poses no risk to the European Union resident owner of that data. And the way you do that is through encryption.
Yeah.
You know, in my own personal life, having served this great American republic, I woke up one day and I was told OPM had been breached. So I was one of the 23 million people,
me too,
right? So everything you could possibly know about me, my family, my in-laws is out there. Yeah. And so what I did to demonetize that threat, to defang that vulnerability, if you will, a couple of things. So we all moved to Macs in the family. All the online banking is done via one dedicated device. That dedicated device does run FortiClient as well as another security suite, refreshed every 18 months. There's no word processing on that device. There's no web browsing. It's all dedicated. Everyone's gone through a security awareness training. And then I pay someone to do a credit freeze for me. So that even if someone has all of my data, it can't be monetized. You can't get a loan in it. And I think one of the things that's really useful for CISOs to help board members consider is that let's take a reasonable level of due care with our enterprise in the same way we would do with our personal lives and our family, those that we really care about, because I think that's going to be one of the questions moving forward. Yeah. Do you take care of your fiduciary responsibilities as well as you take care of your loved ones, right? So, yeah.
Let's talk future a little bit.
Yeah.
What are the big technologies that are going to affect and influence Fortinet? Is it AI, machine learning, quantum? Yeah. What are the things that, what are the big ideas coming up?
Yeah, certainly I think from that distributed ecosystem, the fabric is only going to grow in more capabilities. Yeah. One of the things we just added through the acquisition of Bradford Networks is a network access control and software-defined perimeter capability. And so one of the trends we have...
It's odd you would say that because people tend to think of NAC as a very traditional thing. You're suggesting that may have some future components.
Yeah, because I think now, 10 years after the advent of what we call zero trust or least privileged strategies, you know, we really see that you cannot trust traffic inside a perimeter any more than traffic outside, because the perimeter is disappearing. Right. And so the challenge before us is to meld that zero trust network security strategy, that least privileged network strategy, with a cybersecurity strategy. Yeah. And so what we're looking at from a fabric-based approach is the ability to see every device that's attempting to get network access and to understand who is associated with that device. Is that device properly configured? What is the state of that device? Begin to approach application whitelisting in a very rigorous fashion, and to look at that end to end. Because in that interconnected ecosystem we talked about, connected vehicles, et cetera, all the way down, it's all about network access. So you control that, and we now have the ability to bring a lot of traditional cybersecurity strategies to a much higher level of automation. Married to that is increased ability to understand the context of what's happening. So artificial intelligence, automated playbooks, machine learning to process the huge volumes of data. So if an individual is going to generate 3 to 5 terabytes per day, what is the volume of data that an enterprise is going to generate? Let's say a financial services firm.
Many petabytes.
Petabytes, right? And the number of transactions. Because if you approach a zero trust model or a least privileged strategy, you're going to have to authenticate every transaction. Yeah. Every transaction on a predictive maintenance schedule for a vehicle, traveling down a road with smart contracting, to that connected citizen, connected consumer that's interfacing with your enterprise, generating massive amounts of data and transactions, all of which you've got to be able to see, understand whether that's anomalous or not, and then react. And so the security fabric moving forward is going to be about designing the ability to automate the management of the complexity associated with everything. I mean, I was very taken by something you said in a speech that I saw once. And you said, it's okay that it's complex. I mean, cyber is so interrelated and integrated with every aspect of our lives right now that it's okay to tell people it's complex. And it's our job as risk management folks to help manage that complexity. And in fact, I think that one of the biggest trends moving forward is that it's based on the customer experience, and the customer experience is an outcome-based approach. So, when someone buys a firewall, whether an appliance or a license, it's not because they want a license or a box. It's because they want an outcome.
True.
And when a CISO is hired today, he or she is being asked not only to deliver security and resilience and compliance, but it's an outcome. And an outcome that says on any given day, security will ensure that the following critical workloads and applications function as designed to generate a certain business outcome or quality of life result. And I think intuitively looking forward, we're going to look at things like security by intent or intent-based security, the translation of business outcomes and personal outcomes into security controls. And if we do that right, Ed, we're going to get to the point where we stop breaking the chain, because we'll finally do this right. We'll have business objectives to which risk management strategies are aligned, to which security controls are aligned, finally TTP aligned to execute those controls. In 100% of the data breach summaries I've read, and between you and I, we've seen what? 50,000 plus data breaches?
Sadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
In every one of those cases, there was a gap between the security controls, the risk management strategy, and the business objective.
Yeah. It looks like you're having fun working at Fortinet, Jonathan.
I have this great smile on my face. You know, I've already won.
Life after telecom,
forget
right?
about Mega Millions. I already won the lottery. Okay, I get to represent a company at the forefront of technology. You know, we work with 350,000 customers around the world. And it's an extension of what you and I started back in our telco days,
boy,
right?
so
It's awesome. It's fun.
I'm glad you're doing so well.
Yeah.
And it's such a wonderful thing. Came by to visit, and we got a chance to chat.
It's awesome.
You come back and visit next time you're around.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Katz and grab myself a corned beef and then Patsy's for dinner, right?
Let me know how that works.
All right.
So thank you very much for stopping by.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate it.
And we will see you next time.